Hello everybody, I hope you all are doing well. What I want to do with this recording is to go over some of the very simple syntax of array list. Now in this week's video, I have an outside video that goes over the difference between arrays and array list in details. However, I just want to quickly go over why we would use an array list over an array. Remember, with an array, you always have to come up with a size. Size cannot be changed. However, with an array list, you can or you do not have to quite worry about the size. So what happens is once you define an array list, it creates a list with a certain size, and you can start inputting some values in that array list. But then if your inputted values keeps expanding, it automatically would now create or expand according to your need. Now without back-end schematics or back-end math for this, let's go into looking how you can use an array list. So in this case, I have created very simple programs where I started off with a public class and we call it the ArrayListLecture. And then I have a public static void main. I also did a scanner because I want to make it interactive. And I defined a variable, and these are kind of things that as I was doing or writing the program, I was adding more and more things to it just to give you more and more example. So this line in line 24 basically is the syntax for creating an array list, and I try to write out comments in there. So I would specify the array list that I'm doing, and then I have to use the data type. In some cases you would see that the data type has been given by a T or an E, so basically that's an object. And here is the instantiation or the new object that I create out of array list, and again new array list again, and then some of the newer version you would not need to repeat the string again. I always say that, you know, the general rule is to use array list and then within the sign over here with a greater and a less than and a greater than sign, you have to define the data type, but the newer version of data would allow for this thing to be okay. So that's why you're not seeing any issues here or any error here. The next thing I have in line 26 to 29 is basically showing that I can add values to this array list by just using this method called add. So add is a method within array list, and remember, as soon as we bring in array list, we are bringing in this library called the Java util array list. So this is one of the methods in there, and this is allowing me to add the value inside my array list. So as you see over here, I added 4 things in here, and I can continue adding more to it because, as I said, array list, you know, you don't really need to be worried about the size, so I can continue adding more and more things in here. Okay, and I'm just showing you or adding some more values to it, and these are just random names I'm coming up with. Okay, now after that I'm writing a for statement, and basically it's a for statement which allows me to print the names out. So as you can see over here, for string names, this is the value that I create where I'm holding the value, the list of students, and then I'm basically printing out the values with the system out statement. Now I can also go in and go inside that particular element to specifically pick out one element from here. So I am going to get 2, so basically 0, 1, and 2, so that should give me Jennifer, okay? Now I can also use the set method where I have to specify where I would like to put my value in there. So right now here, once I get the method out, I can use the set method to replace my Jennifer right over here. So 0, 1, and 2 with Gustavo. So I can always go into the list and specifically take some value out and put some value in. And I'm doing the same thing again. I'm basically doing a system out print line and string names and printing out the lanes. Other methods, again, these are just some of the very, very simple methods. It's a sort. And what I'm using here is sort is with collections. It's one of the libraries. So I'm just basically saying collection sort students, and is basically is going to sort out the students according to the alphabet that we have. So it's really that simple, basically calling the sort method and passing the parameter students. And then I'm just printing the values out. So then what I did was, since these are all string, I just basically extended my program and say, okay, let's try to input some grades in here. Okay. Now again, I would ask you how many grades you want to input, and I would capture that value in this variable called number. And then, again, another variable, as I was doing these things, I created another array list here called grades. And then I write a little for loop. I need to take this thing out. A for loop here. And I basically want to repeat it, repeat the values that I want to take depending upon how many grades I want to input. I can input 2 grades or I can input 20 grades. Again, since this is an array list, I don't really have to worry because it just keeps on adding to my grades. So I ask you to input the grades, and then I basically store the value of the grade within this variable called values. And then I'm using again the add method to go in and add to my grade, which is an array list. Remember, this is an array list. This is going to hold the integer data type, and this is my integer. And then I'm going to increment my count, and my do loop would run until the count is less than equals number, and then whatever grades I had put in, I'm just printing the value out. So go ahead and let me run this program. So this is my array lecture. So here is my output. So as you can see over here, my output is from all these values that I inputted. So returning element is Jennifer. Remember, I went and specifically picked out 2. So that's my place in my array list where I can pick it out. So again, if I make it to 1 or 4 or whatever the value is, it's going to go and pluck out that value from there. And then I use the set method. So as you can see, Jennifer is not out because I took it out from this list and added Gustavo in here. So I can add values. So I can immediately take values out and put values in. And then I again did a sort. So as you can see here, after I sort, everything is like A to L. So Adriana, David, D, Derek, and again this is sorted out just by using this method called sort. And then I am inputting another value, and these are all integers. So that's where I'm saying that let's use an array list to input the value number of grades. So how many do I want to input? It all depends. It could be 4 or it could be 40. Okay, since it's an array list, I don't have to really worry about it. So let's say keep it at 7. Okay, and then it's going to come in and say, okay, input my grade, and I keep on inputting my values in here. And of course, it's going to run. It's going to give me 7 options to input my grades. And once all the inputs are done, it's basically displaying my values. So these are all my values that I did. So 58 all the way up to 54. Now, I can also go in and just like I ran this sort method on this string, I can write a sort method on this grades and basically have them sorted out according to if I want to sort it from lower to higher. So these are just example of array list. Remember, the advantage of using array list is I don't have to worry about any size at this point. Now, since we have also done some work earlier with my objects and creating a class and creating an object, I just took the same example and I said, okay, what happens when I really want to write something in a class and object format? Okay, so what I did over here, I created a class called student grades. These are my variables, and then I created a constructor, and in this constructor I have a signature which allows me to pass 3 different parameters: an integer, a string, and a double. And then inside this, I'm basically taking the values that I'm passing in and storing in these variables. Now, remember one thing, I could easily make these things all private and add my getSet methods. This way, every time I would input a value, I can go through the public getSet method. But for convenience purpose, or just to make it simple, I did not do that. Okay, but when you are working with your program, you can always add those getSet methods, make these all private, and then work with it. And then I created another class called student grades, and this is where I actually created some object. But again, I'm using student list. So as you can see over here, I imported my array list. This is my test method that I'm going to run. Here is my main method. This is my list that I created. Again, this is all code that we discussed before. This is an array list. It is of the type object student grades that I had earlier created. And then I created these instances or objects called first, second, third, fourth, and then pass this value over here. Now, one thing you might have noticed that these are all hard-coded values. Okay, I can always make this thing more interactive, where I can ask the user to input a value, and by using the scanner, I can take that value and set it in my private variables over here with a set methods. Okay, so even though this is hard-coded, it's very simple, or it should be very simple for you to convert it into an user interactive, where you're going to ask how many input the value of the first student, and you input your ID, you ask for ID, ask for the name, and then ask for the grade. Again, take the value in, second, third, fourth. So again, you can write or you can ask a question as to how many students you want to input the information for, and depending upon how many students, you can write a for loop or a while loop, so that it will come back and ask you to input the values, and then you would basically come in and add those values to this array list. Okay, so basically I'm saying student list dot add and passing in the first object, the second, and the third, and the fourth. So this is how I'm adding all these values of objects into my student grade. And then I basically have a for statement where I am going and individually printing out the values of the students that I just inputted. Okay, so this is how I'm using my array list. So at this point, if I run my program, you can see that it is now taking the values in that I have hard-coded and displaying the values out. So this is how I'm using an array list. Hopefully, this example, along with some of the other ones, is going to help you understand and comprehend how we can use array list. You can write your assignment, or you can write your application, add some values or add some methods with array list, and would be able to successfully use array list. There are other concepts you can also use, which we have not gone in, but I'm just going to leave it at array list at this point, and the use of some of the methods on the array list. And of course, make sure that you understand that the advantage of using array list is that you're not bound with the size. That's why it's also sometimes referred to as dynamic arrays. Good luck.